PSG desperate to sign Bruno Fernandes and Jadon Sancho this summer. £29 million bid for Matthias de Ligt rejected, and Erik ten Hag has got his new CDM. These are some of the stories we will be discussing on this afternoon's show. But before we get into that, please smash a like on today's episode. Let's try and see 1,000 videos on today's video. And if this is your first time watching, please do subscribe to the channel. I'm live every single day at 8:30, 1:30 and 6. And if there's ever any breaking news, I do go live as well. Currently, only 50% of people who watch our videos are subscribed. So if you aren't subscribed, make sure you get involved. It's your best way to keep up to date with all of your latest Manchester United transfer news and talk. Right, I want to start the show off by talking a little bit about this Matthias de Ligt bid. So this has come out from the very reliable Christian Falk, who is a tier 1 journalist in the Bundesliga, reports for Sport Bild. He's very close to Bayern Munich, and he is reporting that Bayern have rejected a bid of £25 million plus £4 million in add-ons for Matthias de Ligt. He goes on to say that apparently Bayern Munich are demanding £42 million up front, plus an additional $7 million in add-ons. I mean, that's crazy money. I'm sorry. I'm glad that a bid's gone in, and I'm glad that we're actually trying to get this deal over the line, because I think Matthias de Ligt is a definite opportunity on the market. He's a player whose value should be 70, 80 million, right? He's moved for that 2 or 3 times from Ajax to Juventus and Juventus to Bayern Munich. He's obviously fallen out of the first team because of injury problems last season, and ironically, Eric Dyer's taken his place, which I know people are going to laugh at, but that's the situation he finds himself in. You know, he was the starting Dutch centre-back, and now he's sitting on the bench with Eric Dyer playing ahead of him. But in relation to Manchester United, they obviously see him as somebody who is still young, 24 years of age, somebody who's worked with Erik ten Hag before, and somebody that under the right guidance and management could become the player he was before at Ajax and Juventus. So I'm all for this deal, and I think that Man United need to make sure that they don't overpay, because there are injury concerns with de Ligt. Over the past 5 seasons, he has missed 20 games or more every single season. They've all been different injuries, to be fair, so it's not like it's the same problem that keeps coming back. I think he broke his shoulder, he's had problems with his groin, he seems to get a lot of injuries, but in all different areas of his body. Now, that might just be bad luck, or he might be like another Eric Bailly, who is a good player, but made of glass. I don't know. But yeah, I think if Man United can get him for a fair price, I would do this deal. I think £42 million plus add-ons is maybe a bit steep, because the thing we have to ask ourselves is, Bayern Munich are selling him for a reason, right? There's clearly a reason they want rid of him, and that reason is because of his injuries. It must be. There's no other reason. He's a quality centre-back. And so for that, we have to factor in our price. If we pay 50 million for him, which is what they want, including add-ons, pounds, which is like 60 million euros, and then he's injured for 20 games next season, then we're effectively going to be a laughingstock, aren't we? Because you can see from his injury record that he has got problems. So for me personally, I think, if United can get him for maybe 30, 35 million, maybe plus some add-ons, I think we can kind of agree that would be a good deal. But I want you to let me know, how much is Matthias de Ligt worth to Manchester United, or how much is he worth to you? Like, the first bid was rejected, 29 million. I think that was a low bid. It was a starting point. But how much is the max that you would go for with Matthias de Ligt? Let me know in the comment section below. Moving on from that, I want to talk a little bit about Bruno Fernandes, because today, multiple different journalists coming from France, especially very reliable journalists for L'Equipe, are reporting that apparently PSG want to sign Jadon Sancho and Bruno Fernandes this summer. There are some stories even saying that apparently Jadon has already agreed personal terms and that he is close to moving to PSG. Now, obviously we know that Man United are deep in talks with PSG over Manuel Ugarte and Xavi Simons, so it's only natural that players' names come up. They say, oh, what's going on with Bruno? Are you giving him a new contract? He's got 2 years left, etc., etc. And that's obviously to be expected. And I think we have to have a long, hard think about whether we want to move on Bruno now, or we want to run the risk of his contract running down and then him leaving for free. He's got 2 years left of his current deal. He's on 250 grand a week. He apparently wants to stay at United, but wants to be the highest earning player at the club. So he would have to be on 350k a week plus, which is currently what Casemiro and Rashford earn. Now, he turns 30 next month, and the question we have to ask ourselves is, do we want to give Bruno a new 4 or 5 year deal on massive wages at the age of 30? We know that Ineos's policy is that they want players to be under the age of 25, and they don't want to give out big contracts for players who've been here for years, etc., etc. But is there an exception with Bruno Fernandes? He's clearly our best player. I think we can all agree on that, isn't he? Like, his stats are unbelievable. Would I let Bruno go? That's the question that we have to ask ourselves. And I want you to answer in the comment section. Should Manchester United let Bruno and Sancho go? I think if PSG are going to pay big money for him, we're talking 80 to 100 million pounds plus add-ons. I think you have to consider it. I don't think any player's not for sale apart from maybe Mainu. Like if someone wants to pay massive money for Bruno at PSG, and that then allows us to rebuild our squad, then I think you have to consider it. It would be getting rid of your best player, but if that then helps in the long run to plug the gaps in other areas, the CDM, the centre-back, the left-back, the right-back, maybe a winger, maybe another striker. Like we need so many different players this summer. And I think that if there is a genuine option there for massive money to come in for Bruno Fernandes, it has to be considered. Purely because of the reason of him wanting a new deal, all the rest of it. In relation to Sancho, the story is the same, that PSG apparently want to bring Jadon Sancho to Paris this summer. Apparently they've agreed personal terms. Apparently Sancho wants to go. Sancho I would definitely sell. I think if you could get 40, 50 million for him, I would take that. I would then use that money to go and buy Manuel Ugarte from PSG. So it's a win-win for them. They get their 50 million for Ugarte and we get our 50 million for Sancho. You know, everyone's a winner. So in relation to Sancho, it's a 100% yes. I would do that deal. Obviously, the Bruno one's a little bit more complicated and there's loads of different factors we have to consider. And you have to think about who the replacement is, because you can't sell Bruno Fernandes and not bring in an adequate replacement. Now, the story today is that apparently PSG would be willing to sell Ugarte and Xavi Simons to Manchester United if they can get Sancho and Bruno in return. Obviously, we know that Xavi Simons won't be playing for PSG next season. He, for whatever reason, he doesn't want to play there. I don't know why, but he is available for loan with an obligation to buy. Obviously, he worked under Ruud van Nistelrooy at PSV and really broke out into the team that season. So for me personally, I would love to see Xavi Simons at United. Is he good enough to replace Bruno though? I'm not sure. I don't think so. Like, he's not at that level yet, but he would definitely be a great player to have around the squad, especially because of his versatility. You know, he can play on the left, on the right, and he can play as a central attacking midfielder. So Xavi Simons is a big tick for me, but I don't think you can sell Bruno and then your replacement be Xavi Simons, you know? I mean, maybe it would work. Maybe he comes in and I'm proven wrong, but I just think that to go from an experienced, seasoned international in Bruno Fernandes, who's been our best player for the last 3 years in a row, to a young, up-and-coming talent in Xavi Simons, who's still kind of just making his name in the game, is a huge risk. Now, if you want to be argumentative, people will say, well, why did we buy Mason Mount? And I've always looked at the Mason Mount signing and thought, there must have been a reason that we bought Mount. We paid £60 million for a player who plays in the same position as Bruno Fernandes, and a player that when he was available was sat on the bench. Bruno doesn't get dropped. He's never injured. I think he's missed one game in 4 years, right? So what's the logic in spending £60 million on Mason Mount for him to just sit on the bench? Like, that's the bit that I'll never understand. And I had a long, hard think about it. And I really do think that they brought him in as a replacement for Bruno Fernandes. And I know people are going to be like, what are you talking about? He's not of the level of that. But Mason Mount, when he was in form at Chelsea, was a very, very good player, you know? He won them the Champions League. Like, he is a good footballer, but he's just obviously had a really poor season last year with injuries and stuff. But I'd be interested to know what you all think. Like, would you be okay with Bruno and Sancho going? And if that meant that the replacements were, say, Xavi Simons and Manuel Ugarte came in as well, would you be happy with that? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. There is always the potential that we go in for Dani Olmo as well. He's available for 60 million euros. So we'll wait and see what happens with that one. But at the moment, as it stands, apparently PSG are trying to sign Sancho and Bruno, with the deal for Sancho being a little bit more advanced. Now, in relation to the final news story I've got for you today, Erik ten Hag has got his new CDM. That's what's being reported this lunchtime. Apparently, Collier, the young English central defensive midfielder, is apparently going to be promoted to the first team and be given game time next season. This is being reported by Manchester Evening News this lunchtime, that apparently Erik ten Hag sees him as a future first team player. He's a name that's been on the agenda for a very, very long time. He's kind of put in the same bracket as Kobbie Mainoo, of a player that was destined for great things. And I'll be honest, in the game against Rangers, he didn't look like a youth player who was playing his first minutes in the first team. I don't think so. I think he looked composed. He was fast. He was, putting in good tackles. He didn't look like what you'd expect a youth player to look like. So I'm really, really happy that he's going to get an opportunity. I think from what I've seen of him so far, he looks quality. And obviously Manchester United over the past 10, 20, 30 years has been built on the youth team. So really happy about that. But let me know, is he ready? Thank you very much for watching today's video. It was just a quick lunchtime roundup. Please make sure to smash a like before you leave. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. This has been Daily Red Devil, and I'll speak to you all on the next one. Bye for now.